Tiki Barber saying this isn't a make or break year for Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And John Mara is not going to sit still for a 5-win season or a 6-win season. He is not going to sit still. This is an organization that's won 4 championships, 4 Super Bowls in the last 35 years. They're not going to sit still and say, hey, you know what? Our last championship was 2011, 2010, 2011. We're not the Jets. We're not the Detroit Lions. We're not any of these organizations. We still have an opportunity in the next couple of years to win one. When this is an organization is what have you done for me lately type of organization. And Joe Schoen, what has he done in the draft? If you look at his draft last year and what he has done with Thibodeau's become a fairly decent player. But if you look at his numbers against the elite offensive lines in football, they're not good, okay? Let's be honest. They're not good. And now Evan Neal. Evan Neal, we don't know what position he's going to play this year. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? They're saying he's a right tackle. If they put him at the right tackle position, expect him to play guard or even be taken out early this season. This guy has been a failure of a player since he's come from Alabama, since he's been a top 10 pick. Now, if you look at Joe Schoen's draft this year, he drafted a very good young prospect like Malik Nabers. I think Malik Nabers is a guy that could become a superstar in the league. I look at Justin Jefferson, who came from LSU. He became a superstar. Jamar Chase. LSU has always found these wide receivers and have become superstars. Odell Beckham, another guy that the Giants know very much about, another LSU prospect player that came from that university and was very successful here before his hamstring and knee problems. I look at the Giants right now, and I do believe this is a make or break year. And if you don't believe John Mara and Joe Schoen's disconnect is a problem, well, guys, you're blind. Joe Schoen did not want to bring back Saquon Barkley. It wasn't the organization. The players were shocked that they didn't bring a guy like Saquon Barkley back, who's been their best offensive option. He's been really Daniel Jones' number 1 option. And you wonder where this organization is heading. Well, when you have a dictator like Mr. Brian Daboll, who can't keep his coaches happy, can't keep his players happy, where there was a bunch of players at the end of the season that we never even heard of those players and what disgruntled players were speaking after the season because it was kept in the locker room, which is interesting. It's not Jet-like because when usually there's a disgruntled player from the New York Jets, all those players are pretty much ratted out usually before the season's end. Well, the Giants have kept it inside the locker room, but there was a numerous amount of players that didn't like what Daboll did last year. The coaching of this team from the first year was absolutely depleted, and the talent is depleted from this team. Now, you look at the wide receiving position, and we just mentioned Malik Nabers. They brought in a guy like Robinson. Robinson is a washed-up player. He is not the same player he was when he played for Chicago or Jacksonville. That was when Robinson was a top player at his position. And then even when he was on Chicago, the first year of Chicago, he played very, very well. He's not the same player. So what the Giants did this offseason was nothing to help Daniel Jones besides bringing in Malik Nabers. And they hurt Daniel Jones because if you look at Daniel Jones's numbers and his record without Saquon Barkley, they're below 500. So you look at going into the season, you're betting on a running back who has been a journeyman. And I don't care what anybody says, he's been a journeyman, playing for the Buffalo Bills, playing for the Texans. I don't know if you're going to trust in a guy like that, who, by the way, is also injury prone.
And undersized.
And then you bring in, or you draft, you bring in Moss, who I think Moss could be a player. I think he could be a player that you could use in certain parts of your offense, but he is not a number 1, and I don't think he's even a full number 2.
And they drafted a running back in the 5th round in Tyrone Tracy, but he's mostly a special teams guy.
Yeah, so you don't really have a number 1 guy. You don't have a guy that could be like a Saquon Barkley-esque type of player that can catch the ball in the backfield, run the ball, and do all those things that can throw teams off, and you don't know what to expect in the backfield. So knowing that they're weak in certain positions offensively, that would look, if you look at schemes, the way Daboll likes to line people up and teams try to figure out what they're going to be running, it's going to be a lot easier to read the Giants going into the season than it was last year with Saquon Barkley, because Saquon can catch the ball and he can run the ball in many different ways. But you can see there's a disconnect. And I think it's not Daboll and Schoen. I think it's Mara and Schoen. And usually when there's a disconnect with the owner and the GM, it usually means it's not going to be long for the owner to say, okay, we need to bring somebody else in. And then if he brings somebody else in, that GM is going to bring in his own coach. So I believe that this is absolutely a make or break year. And I do believe that Mara wanted to sign Saquon Barkley. He wanted to find some kind of negotiation with Saquon Barkley because he's not happy with him going to the Eagles and seeing him play for the Eagles for the next couple of years and have to see him week after week dominate in the same division. I know that John Mara is not happy, and I know Steve Tisch is not happy about that either, that your best offensive option over the last couple of years is playing for a team that your fans and your organization absolutely hates.